Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Club. This week is Group 3, so of course that means the Genesis is the meta once again, and we're going to turn to a now familiar face for the anti-meta. Let's get into it. I'm extremely happy to announce that the Mark IV Supra, the GT500 Supra from the 90s, is the anti-meta car of the week again. With enough power to pass the Genesis and the Ford on the straights, it's also nimble enough to pass in the corners, as you can see. Tire wear isn't much of a factor, but it still is a factor, and this car has incredible tire saving capabilities. The last time we used this car, I surprised myself and I set it up myself. And once again, I have managed to somehow come up with a set that works really well. Don't forget to adjust the tune every race because it does reset between races. This is the most dominance I've seen from a car in the top 100 in a very long time. Almost the entirety of the top 100 is the Genesis. There are a few other cars, obviously. As you can see, there's the Ford GT, and I was happy to put the Supra into 78th place, the fastest Supra at the time, though I do believe Drifter had a faster time before changing cars. Starting on the left gets you used to the line that you should take when you're trying to defend, as well as how you come out of the last corner, and also you can move onto the curb after you hit the brakes. We want to brake right before the 100-meter board, and we're going to move onto the curb only after that. Get down to third gear and start turning in before you get to the end of the red and white curbing. We want to dip down to second gear and then back up to third. Second gear in this car can really help it rotate, but you've got to get back up to third gear before you get on the throttle. I slid just a little bit here, and that did cost me a couple hundredths, but it wasn't too bad and we stayed on the throttle. Looking for the next set of meter boards, we're going to look for the 50, and directly after the 50 is a nice white spot in the grass, and that is where we're going to hit our brakes. Staying full brake and downshifting to fourth only briefly, we're then going to continue trail braking, getting to third gear, trying to just barely skim this inside curb. Sneak in as much throttle as you can, then look for the start of the curb on the right. Well before that curb, we want to hit the brakes, downshift to second, and just barely skim over the inside curb again. If you go too high over it, you're going to bounce and it's going to take you too long to be able to get on the throttle. Third gear for the exit. Make sure that you're aiming to use this runoff, but if you slide like I did, you're going to lose a couple hundredths at least. Moving to the right side of the track, again, we're going to look for the hanging meter boards, and after the 50-meter board, this second white post that's on the guardrail is our braking point. Brake in a straight line until you pass two more of those white posts on the guardrail, get down to third gear, turn in, trail brake lightly, and get off the brakes as soon as you can. The period after coming off the brakes when you turn in while coasting is extremely important for getting the car tucked in as much as you can. Once you're facing these marshals, we want to hit the throttle in fourth gear, continue steering, making sure that you're not understeering or oversteering, and you want to actually avoid the grass between the asphalt and the barrier. It looks like you can get almost all the way up to the barrier, but there's a little bit of grass and it will kill your momentum. Staying tight to the inside here is faster. We actually want to stay in fifth gear and not shift up to sixth before the next braking zone. Right before the 100-meter board is a darker spot of the track. Right as you touch that is when we want to hit the brakes. Full brake, downshift all the way down to second gear in a straight line, and keep your eyes open for this dirt patch in the grass here on the right. You're going to be trail braking pretty heavily, keeping a lot of pressure as you turn in, and we're going to look for the stop sign just on the other side of the corner. Once you hit the clipping point by the stop sign, pop it back up to third gear, and we're actually going to get on the throttle aiming for the outside of the track. We want to hit that runoff, getting on the throttle as early as you can. Be very careful not to hit the wall as you turn right, and then hug the left here, clip the right, and then move over to the left side of the track. Get right up next to this stop sign and then turn in, staying on full throttle, trying to make sure that you don't hit the grass on the inside. We want to navigate the car so that we don't use all of this runoff area. We get back on the track itself before we get to the braking zone, which is going to be at the beginning of the colored barrier on the right. Settle the car, don't use full braking, downshift to fourth gear, and we want to try to keep our speed up, getting it as close as we possibly can to this inside barrier. Get on the throttle as soon as you know that you can make it without going into the grass. Use all of this runoff, don't forget to shift to fifth, and then move back onto the track before the end of the runoff. The next braking zone comes quick, so keep your eyes out for the 100-meter board. As soon as we get right past it, we're going to hit the brakes. Again, we're going to go full brake in a straight line, getting all the way down to second gear, and then when you get to this tree here after the marshals, that's when we're going to start turning in second gear. The stop sign is again conveniently placed for your clipping point, which is all the way on the other side of the corner. Third gear for the exit, trying to make sure we use all of the runoff and minimize any kind of oversteer. If you get any oversteer, correct it as fast as you can because that will just eat away at all of your momentum. The rest of it is full throttle. It's not that hard to time this, but just make sure you turn in early enough that you're using all of the inside curbing and you don't go into the grass on the exit. It's a short lap, but it is deceptively tricky, so let's watch it in full speed. The curbs can make braking pretty weird. If you start braking while you're on the curbs already, it can make you not slow down as efficiently, so brake before you get on the curbs and then steer onto them. You want to turn in really early. You don't want to hit a late apex on that corner right there. It's really important to keep up your speed throughout this entire section, and that hinges entirely on getting a really good exit from the first corner. It's easy to overdrive and kind of exaggerate the line you want to take. You just want to go into the middle of the track. You don't really need to sacrifice the first corner for the second corner, because the period of full throttle after that second corner is not super long, so it's not as important to get a really good entry into it. This corner, however, this left-hander, is a completely different story, and you want to sacrifice as much as you can to make sure that you get on the throttle as early as you possibly can, leading to this really long straight. You do not need to shift into 6th gear for time trial, but if you are following in someone's slip, you will need to shift into 6th gear. It's really difficult to find the timing and exactly when to turn in. It's really going to be about instincts after doing it enough times, so don't get too frustrated. Just do your laps, do a race, come back to your time trial, and it should start making sense. This left-hander is extremely tricky. You don't want to brake too much because you'll get understeer, so brake just enough to tuck the nose in and keep up your speed. This final corner isn't quite as tight as the last really tight corner after the last back straight, but since it's going to be a full throttle section afterwards, a really long one, you want to make sure you hit a late apex on it, and that stop sign really helps with that. Don't touch the grass at all on the inside for that final corner right there. It will slow you down more than you think. But yeah, good luck. You may notice this looks a little bit different than the usual videos. We're not starting at the beginning of a race, and that's because I had an incredibly difficult time getting a good race recorded. So instead, I'm just going to show you a few of the things that the Supra can do. Right here, we have 3 Jennies. We got 3 Jennies, and they're all slipstreaming off of each other. And despite that, as you can see, the Supra is powerful enough not only to get right up next to him, but straight up past the one in the back. And shout out to Racepace. Racepace is a buddy of mine. We race with him all the time. He's a friend from my stream, and we were able to get past 2 of them. Even having that really sacrificed line, we were still able to stay close to Hellsfire afterwards. So yeah, it's both nimble and incredibly powerful. In another race, I found myself in a very similar situation in the same area, and as you can see, we've got a Genesis drafting off another Genesis, the 2 meta cars working together. Julio's trying to pass on the outside, and I always look for an opportunity. I was going to follow G through, but then I realized as I got closer, he was going to move over just a little bit, so I tried to sneak it up the inside. Trying to be careful, making sure I don't run into either of those guys. I braked a little bit earlier than I needed to, but that was good because G did turn in a little bit earlier than I would have needed if I was going to try to be side by side with him, but it was fine. We stayed clean, and I was able to get right in front of Julio. Despite a really bad exit, we were still able to stay close to G, and we were able to go a lot faster through this section than he was, so we were able to stick on his tail. The plan now would be to wait until the next straight, get a really good exit, and then pass him before the next corner. G, however, got a really good exit, and I didn't quite get a good enough exit, so I wasn't quite able to get next to him before the corner, so I was going to have to make a pass. He very intelligently decided defending on the inside, and I decided to place my trust in a stranger. This car is really oversteery, and you can actually use that to your advantage. A quick blip of the throttle allowed us to actually rotate just a little bit and stay next to him. He was kind enough to give me space, and we were able to get all the way in front of him because we did have the faster line coming out of there. For the actual strategy of the race, the best thing to do, even if you're up front sometimes, is to start on the medium tires. When you're starting in the front, a lot of people are going to want to just run away from the pack, just try to make sure that they don't have to deal with any traffic, and so a lot of people are just going to use the softs. If you're in the 2nd to 5th place, I'd say, then it's a really good idea to just start on the mediums. If you're starting in the back, you could do the opposite, knowing that the people who are going to be near you are going to be starting on mediums and going into the pits really early, but that is a gamble. Since you do actually have to use 2 different tire compounds, you really are limited to when you go into the pits. You can either go into the 2nd to last or last lap if you start on softs, or you can go in the 1st or 2nd lap if you start on mediums. I should have actually gone on the 2nd lap, but I chose the 1st lap just to try to maximize the amount of time we have on softs, and unfortunately I ran into traffic because of that. As you know, if you watch a lot, I try to set up moves where I'm not really going to die, but I want them to think I might. And unfortunately, it worked too well because he ended up parking the car on the apex after making a little bit of an error in braking. But either way, that's still my fault. So I felt bad about bumping into him. And I think that that little drift where I just destroyed my tires and slowed myself down a lot was probably good enough punishment for giving him that little nudge. If you're watching Infernal, I apologize for hitting you, but as you can see, I don't think he's too upset about it. He's not even defending, and so that's that. Following 2 more Jennies here, I am of course defending in case Infernal does want to go for a move, but it doesn't look like he's trying at all. And now I'm just focusing on trying to stay close to these guys so I can get the slipstream, but that was unnecessary. You're probably going to see a lot of incidents like that, so keep your eyes peeled. With the next driver a solid 2.5 seconds ahead, we are in a perfect position so that we can just lap, not worry about dirty air, not worry about fighting people, not worry about traffic, and that is going to be the best, most effective strategy possible. The best strategy for this race is the most boring one. You want to spend as much time as you possibly can completely alone. Since I was able to get past most of the traffic in the beginning of my soft stint, once everyone had completed their stints and everyone had changed both tires, I ended up all the way in 3rd place. Now this race wasn't without its incidents. I had a few very annoying situations, so I didn't want to even include it. I don't usually like calling out other drivers because a lot of people are just doing their best and making mistakes, but I do want to call out the very end of this as well as show you how effective it can be to pit early and then just run your own race, essentially lapping completely by yourself. As you can see, it's very effective. But right here, Thumpy, who is a very fast driver and who also pit early, is trying to pass on the inside. Tim moves to defend. Thumpy goes for another thing. Tim moves to defend. Thumpy goes for another move. Tim goes to defend again, so Thumpy runs directly into him. Tim, that is not how you race. That is not only against the rules, but it's pathetic. If you have to defend and physically block another car with your car, then you didn't win that race. Thumpy deserved the win there, and Tim deserves to be somewhere not there. It's very upsetting to see that kind of thing, so please call out people when you see that behavior. It is not okay. But with that, I digress. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a really good race and show you the entire thing. However, I was able to show you what this car is capable of in a few different places, and you can see it is definitely fast enough to pass the Jenny on the straight, which sometimes is all you need. Your support means the world to me. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will be making another one of these videos every single week. Thank you.